Hi, we're the Ropers, and this is another serving of Potluck Politics. The beginning of May, 4 long months ago, we did a program about the coronavirus pandemic and the President's response or non-response to it. That was episode 1, and if you haven't seen it, it's still out there on YouTube. Now we're heading into the final stretch of the presidential election season, and the pandemic still rages on. It's time for an update. So this is episode 2, 2020, a year to remember.
Even though most of us didn't believe that come summer the virus would magically disappear, there was some reason for optimism when we last did a program. The guidelines for wearing masks, social distancing, closing down schools and businesses had actually helped to slow the spread and flatten the curve. The Northeast was the epicenter of the coronavirus early on. New York State had more than 11,000 new cases on a single day in April. But by May, northeastern states were seeing a steady decline in cases, and some areas in the Midwest had few or none. That was all to change as the weather warmed up and as messages from the White House stayed confusing.
At the beginning of May, after a two-month shutdown in most of the country, the President was pushing states to reopen their economies. Warning, quote, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself," unquote. The advice came despite a projection at the time of an eventual 100,000 deaths from coronavirus. The Center for Disease Control guidelines for opening safely were produced in April, but sent back for revision because they were overly restrictive. The White House advised states to open up in safe and responsible ways based on their own data and response efforts. And we all know how that went. As usual, it was about the economy and the President's re-election, not about a national strategy for controlling the virus. May 5th, in an ABC News interview, Trump admits the dangers of reopening. Quote, "I am viewing our great citizens of this country to a large extent, as warriors. They're warriors. We can't keep our country closed. We have to open our country. Will some people be badly affected? Yes," unquote. May 7th, one of the President's personal valets tests positive for coronavirus despite frequent testing of everyone in his orbit. 3 days later, the Vice President's press secretary also tested positive. Meanwhile, testing for the general population is still in short supply. May 10th, administration staff are ordered to stop wearing masks in the White House, even though the President still refuses to do so. May 12th, top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci, in anticipation of his appearance before the Senate, quote, "The major message that I wish to convey to the Senate committee is the danger of trying to open the country prematurely. If we skip over the checkpoints in the guidelines to open America again, then we risk the danger of multiple outbreaks throughout the country. This will not only result in needless suffering and death, but would actually set us back on our quest to return to normal," unquote. May 14th. Despite warnings about the importance of testing to control the spread of the virus, the President says, quote, "So we have the best testing in the world. Could be that testing is frankly overrated. We have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case," unquote. It's not really how it works. May 16th, House of Representatives passes $3 trillion HEROES Act, which includes more stimulus money, increased unemployment benefits, student loan forgiveness, rental and mortgage assistance, and assistance for state and local governments, postal service funds, and more. Mitch McConnell said, quote, "dead on arrival," unquote, when it reached the Senate. May 18th, the President claims he is taking daily doses of hydroxychloroquine despite FDA warnings about its effectiveness and side effects. May 19th, the President at a cabinet meeting at the White House says of the 1.5 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, the highest number of infections globally, quote, "I view it as a badge of honor. Really, it's a badge of honor. It's a great tribute to the testing and all of the work that a lot of professionals have done," unquote. May 20th, under pressure from the President states across the country reversed their stay-at-home orders, led by those states with Republican governors. May 26th, Memorial Day weekend, reveals what opening up the states could mean. One memorable image shows young people in a pool at Lake of Ozarks, Missouri, elbow to elbow with no social distancing and no face coverings. The president returns to golfing as the nation nears 100,000 deaths from the coronavirus. That had been the projected number for total deaths at the beginning of the month. 100,000 is more than the numbers of troops who died in World War I and the Vietnam War combined. Both the president and Joe Biden attend wreath-laying ceremonies over the weekend. The president mocks Biden for wearing a mask outdoors, but Biden responds, quote, "He's a fool," unquote.
At the beginning of June, the picture was pretty mixed. Cases in the Northeast were continuing to drop, and some cities were reopening. But elsewhere in the country, there were still high numbers and also alarming new outbreaks in various states. Some of those states had been open for weeks in accord with the president's exhortations. It was hard to tell if the virus was waning or not, and hard to tell what might happen next. June 1st, the president sends 2 million doses of hydroxychloroquine to Brazil. Who is making money off this stuff? June 6th, U.S. death toll passes 110,000. June 11th, despite the president's comment, "We've made every decision correctly and now the trajectory is great," new hotspots started to emerge, with 20 states seeing rising numbers. June 17th, the president says again, and it is dying out. The numbers are starting to get very good. Just a few days later, the death toll passes 120,000. June 20th, the president holds a campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and few of the 6,000 attendees are wearing masks. One of his comments during the night, "When you do more testing to that extent, you will find more cases. I said to my people, slow the testing down, please." Kellyanne Conway later claims he was jesting, which he later denies. June 23rd, CDC Director Robert Redfield says COVID-19 has brought this nation to its knees. And 2 more White House aides test positive. June 25th, the CDC says there may be 10 times as many cases as we know about. June 26th, 30 states see rising numbers of cases as the virus spikes in the South and West. Florida, Texas, and Arizona, where the governors were bullish about opening up the economy, are the latest coronavirus epicenters. Houston is running out of hospital beds. June 27th, the president claims in a tweet that he will always protect people with pre-existing conditions. Always, always, always. But meanwhile, his administration is in court right now trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act in the middle of a pandemic. June 30th, Vice President Pence wears a mask to a public briefing and has been encouraging others to do the same in recent days. But in an interview with the Wall Street Journal earlier in the month, the president claimed some people might wear masks to signal disapproval of him. Neither of them wear masks in many later outings.
At the beginning of July, it was obvious that the coronavirus was still with us. 45 states were seeing an increase in cases, with many of them reaching new daily records. States and cities were reversing their reopening policies and imposing nightly curfews. The South and West had become the new epicenter for the virus. The Memorial Day holiday was blamed for some of the spread in cases, and the July 4th holiday promised even more. July 1st, several Republican-led states that moved quickly to reopen in the spring reimposed their restrictions. North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas hit new daily records. July 4th, the president holds a rally in front of Mount Rushmore with few masks and no social distancing. He has inquired about getting his face added to the monument. July 6th, Europe has banned American visitors, and Mexico and Canada have closed their borders with the United States. The president tweets, quote, "Schools must open in the fall," unquote. July 8th, the United States reports more than 60,000 new cases, the biggest increase ever reported by any country in a single day. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, the health department director says the president's campaign rally in June likely contributed to the recent surge in cases in the state. President tweets, "I disagree with the CDC in the very tough and expensive guidelines for opening schools." The CDC then announces it will issue new guidelines about safely reopening schools. The last coronavirus model suggests 200,000 dead by November. July 10th. Infections are spiking in Florida, Arizona, and Texas. Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, will not slow reopening. Arizona is shutting down bars, theaters, gyms, and water parks. But bar owners are suing. The Texas governor is requiring face masks to slow the spread, and Republicans are voting to censure him. Dr. Fauci says he hasn't briefed the president in 2 months. The president says, quote, "Dr. Fauci is a nice man, but he's made a lot of mistakes," unquote. July 12th. Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education, vows to cut off federal funding for public schools that do not reopen. July 13th. 5.4 million Americans have lost their health insurance because of the pandemic. Mick Mulvaney, White House Chief of Staff, admits the economy cannot recover until COVID-19 is under control and says the country's current testing abilities are, quote, "simply inexcusable." July 15th. Hospital administrators are told to send data about coronavirus cases to HHS Protect and Teletracking, and not to the CDC system, which has been in place for 15 years. The indications are that these two private companies may hide the data or use it to manipulate supplies of remdesivir. July 16th. The United States hits a peak of 75,682 new cases. The highest number in the first wave of cases, centered mainly in the Northeast, was 36,741 on April 24th. July 17th. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp sues the mayor of Atlanta over her ordinance mandating residents wear masks. July 20th. After wearing a Washington Nationals face mask when he testified to Congress, Dr. Fauci is asked to throw out the ceremonial first pitch for the team on opening day, July 23rd. 3 days later, when he threw his pitch, it was so far off base that someone commented on Twitter, quote, "He clearly doesn't want anyone to catch anything," unquote. July 23rd, with coronavirus still spiking in Florida, the president announces that he is canceling the Republican National Convention, which was to be held in Jacksonville in August. The president claims he's been invited to throw out the first pitch at a Yankees game in August, to the surprise of team officials. July 24th, although unemployment benefits and the eviction moratorium run out on July 31st, the Republican Senate and the White House are unable to come up with a relief bill, and senators go home for the weekend. July 29th, Texas Republican Representative Louis Gohmert, who refuses to wear a mask or allow his staff to wear them, tests positive for the coronavirus. July 30th, Herman Cain, co-chair of Black Voices for Trump, dies of coronavirus, possibly contracted at the president's June 20th rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he was seen without a mask. The president suggests in a tweet that because of the dangers of mail-in voting, we may have to delay the November election.
By August 1st, the second wave of cases had peaked and daily cases were finally on a downward trend again. On that date, there were only 56,821 new cases and 1,055 deaths. The United States had surpassed 150,000 deaths the week before, 25% of the world's total number. Even so, the president continued to insist on reopening. The unemployment benefits from the first stimulus bill had expired, with no solution in sight. August 2nd, the president takes his 282nd trip to a golf course since he took office. And Deborah Birx says schools cannot safely reopen until the virus is under control. The president then lashes out at her for contradicting his claims about the very good job they are doing. August 3rd, in an interview with Axios, the president says of 1,000 deaths per day, "They're dying. That's true. It is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can." August 4th, the president attends his first White House coronavirus task force meeting since April. August 5th, the president, in his push to open schools in the fall, claims children are almost immune from this disease. August 7th, A report by Vanity Fair reveals the White House did not implement a national plan earlier in the crisis because the infection seemed to be impacting mostly blue states. August 8th, after the Republicans refused to negotiate on economic relief and talks between the White House and Democrats stall, the president takes executive action, including promising $70 billion from FEMA funds for unemployment benefits. 2 days later, August 10th, a derecho roars through Iowa with 100-mile-per-hour winds and severe damage, and the Republican governor asks for FEMA assistance. She gets a very small portion of what she asked for. August 14th, COVID infections among children in Florida rose 137% over the last month. August 17th, schools that had opened early in several states, including Indiana, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Georgia, closed down to in-person learning after students and staffers test positive for COVID-19. August 17th to the 20th, the Biden campaign holds a virtual convention as planned months before. August 21st, statistics show that of the 83 countries in the world considered higher income industrialized nations, 75% of all coronavirus deaths have been in the United States. The CDC changes its testing guidelines and now says people with recent exposure to COVID do not necessarily need to get tested, a change made in response to White House pressure. August 24th to the 27th, few, if any, wear masks at the Republican National Convention, which is held in part on the White House lawn, a clear violation of the Hatch Act. The president's campaign rallies earlier in the month in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Arizona were also notable for the lack of social distancing and the absence of masks. August 29th, 1,200 students at the University of Alabama have tested positive for COVID in the last 2 weeks. August 31st, the White House announces that the United States will not join a group of more than 170 countries who agree to develop, manufacture, and distribute fairly a coronavirus vaccine. There is so much more that happened this summer, and there is so much more to come. Dr. Atlas, convalescent plasma, the deep state at the CDC. The news just keeps pouring down on us. But that's the last 4 months, briefly.
And in other news, as if the coronavirus wasn't enough to fill any news cycle, there was lots more happening this summer. On May 25th, police in Minneapolis, Minnesota killed George Floyd by kneeling on his neck until he could no longer breathe. He allegedly had passed a counterfeit bill at a local store. His death sparked a nationwide protest against what was seen as systemic racism in police departments around the country. On June 16th, police in Atlanta, Georgia, killed Rayshard Brooks by shooting him in the back. His crime seemed to be falling asleep in a Wendy's drive-up line. By then, every corner of the country was seeing Black Lives Matter protests, most of them peaceful, but in some areas where there was violence and bloodshed. To this day, it is not totally clear who is behind the looting and vandalism that is still going on. On August 23rd, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back and seriously injured by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Officers allege Blake had a knife and fought with them, but video footage shows otherwise. Protests there resulted in 2 deaths when a 17-year-old crossed state lines to act as a vigilante. The president has done little to defuse the situation, actually trying without success to develop his own military force to supersede local law enforcement in areas with ongoing riots. Kellyanne Conway, White House spokesperson, may have summarized the president's position best when she said, quote, "The more chaos and anarchy and vandalism and violence reigns, the better it is for a candidate running on law and order," unquote. Although the president has used scenes of violence and disruption to portray life under a Biden presidency, Joe countered, "This is still Trump's America."
For those of you who need visuals, this graph shows daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases in the United States. Clearly, the summer surge was way greater than the wave in the spring. This graph shows daily new confirmed COVID-19 cases in the United States and in other countries around the world, including Russia, the United Kingdom, Italy, China, and Spain. Those countries are at the bottom of this graph, and we, sadly, are the top line. To put it another way, in this country, it was 99 days to the first 1 million cases, 43 days to 2 million cases, 28 days to 3 million cases, 15 days to 4 million cases, then 17 days to 5 million, and 22 days to 6 million. Luckily, the summer spike is tapering off, but school openings, indoor dining, and the usual flu season are sure to have an effect. We should have it contained by now, and we don't. If you've been listening, you've heard a lot of fake news quotes, but there were some good quotes this summer too. So here are just a few of them.
Joe Biden said on the 4th of July, quote, "Independence Day is a celebration of our persistent march toward greater justice, the natural expansion of our founding nation from all men are created equal to all people are created equal and should be treated equally throughout their lives."
The president sent troops to Portland, Oregon, and they weren't really welcome. And there were incidents that ensued because of them. A group formed called the Wall of Moms to keep peace between demonstrators and the police and the troops. And this is a quote from them. "I don't see no riot here. Take off your riot gear. Feds stay clear. Moms are here."
John Lewis, an icon of the civil rights movement, died this summer, unfortunately. But his words live on. It was an op-ed that he wrote, and it was in the New York Times posthumously. "Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring."
We mentioned that Dr. Fauci was chosen to throw out the first ball for the Washington Nationals. And they said at that time, "Dr. Fauci has been a true champion for our country during the COVID-19 pandemic and throughout his distinguished career. So it is only fitting that we honor him and kick off the 2020 season and defend our World Series championship title."
Joe Biden at the Democratic National Convention said this, "In times as challenging as these, I believe there's only one way forward. As united America, united in our pursuit of a more perfect union, united in our dream of a better future for us and for our children, united in our determination to make the coming years bright. Are you ready? I believe we are. This is a great nation. We're a good and decent people."
Kamala Harris, Biden's vice presidential choice, said this, "I think we need to ask ourselves, why don't they want us to vote? Why is there so much effort to silence our voices? And the answer is because when we vote, things change. When we vote, things get better."
Again, Joe Biden said at the Democratic National Convention, quote, "Love is more powerful than hate. Hope is more powerful than fear. And light is more powerful than dark. This is our moment. This is our mission. May history be able to say that the end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight as love and hope and light join in the battle for the soul of the nation. And this is a battle we will win, and we'll do it together."
And now for the book report. There are 1,200 books out about Donald Trump, and more coming every day. Compare that to only 500 for Obama. It seems that every few days now a new one is released, and mostly they're not complimentary. If you're only going to read one of them, I recommend this one. Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. Written by Donald's niece, Mary Trump, a trained clinical psychologist, it reveals a background that only family would know about. It becomes obvious why so much has gone wrong with this presidency when you realize how Fred Trump chose Donald, his middle son, because of his killer instincts, and then propped him up through all of his financial failures. Let me just read a couple of paragraphs. Donald was to my grandfather what the border wall has been for Donald, a vanity project funded at the expense of more worthy pursuits. And later. Donald takes any rebuke as a challenge and doubles down on the behavior that drew fire in the first place, as if the criticism is permission to do worse. Fred came to appreciate Donald's obstinacy because it signaled the kind of toughness he sought in his sons. 50 years later, people are literally dying because of his catastrophic decisions and disastrous inaction. The deafening silence in response to such a blatant display of sociopathic disregard for human life or the consequences for one's own actions fills me with despair and reminds me that Donald isn't really the problem after all. This is the end result of Donald's being continually given a pass and rewarded not just for his failures, but for his transgressions against tradition, against decency, against the law, and against fellow human beings. His acquittal in the sham Senate impeachment trial was another such reward for bad behavior. The lies may become true in his mind as soon as he utters them, but they're still lies. It's just another way for him to see what he can get away with. And so far, he's gotten away with everything. Too Much and Never Enough by Mary Trump. If you're going to read a book, it should be this one. Or pick one of the other 1,200. But it's good to know all you can.
So what do you think Trump is going after now?
Ice cream?
Not that I know of.
Puppies?
I don't think so, but he never has had a pet.
The American flag?
Not so far, but he wraps himself in the flag, which is pretty disrespectful. No, it's the post office.
The post office that brings us mail every day, rain or shine, snow or sleet, wherever we live?
Yep, the post office that used to bring my letters all the way from Japan to Nowhere, Illinois on a weekly basis. Yep, his lackey, Louis the Joyless, has authorized smashing machines that can sort 32,000 pieces of mail an hour in the interest of efficiency.
Why would he do that?
Trump's afraid if everyone gets to vote by mail because of the pandemic, he'll lose.
Well, anyone who doesn't support the post office should lose.
Yes, he should. Please participate in the census if you haven't already. Thanks for watching this serving of Potluck Politics. 2020, a year to remember. We hope it has reminded you of the grim events of the last 4 months and given you renewed incentive to remember November. As always, and more than ever, stay safe and be well.